Okay, guys, we're back. We're going to work on the 55 a little bit more tonight or this morning, or depending on where you are when you're watching this video. Uh, we're going to do a little bit of the painting on here on our engine and chassis parts. Uh, we're going to start with. I'm going to start working on the engine. I've started a little bit since the last time we were here. I had my orange rattle can spray paint. It's a cheap brand I picked up at Walmart or Michael's or somewhere like that. Just an orange paint. We painted that. We painted the fan belt assembly with our black primer. Our rear end differential with the same black primer. And the chassis pan with the front suspension attached to it. And then also the inside, because you'll be able to see down in there once we're done. So we're going to do a little bit of painting on it. My go-to would be, for a basic beginner, would be to use the craft acrylics that you get at Walmart, the big book art bottles, and there's different brands that not Create Checks. There's Apple Barrel, the book art. There's Americana or something like that. Get your craft hobby Walmart's carry. But I'm out of the silver for that, so I'm going to use my Vallejo paint. But you could still, just whatever. If I had it, I would use it, but I don't. So I'm going to use this one. It's the same. If there's any in there, not even being in. There's a little bit in there. There's enough. Okay, so we're going to use that just because it's what I have. When we get to the black, so probably I'll break out some of the other one. So brushes, I buy the cheap sets. You get 8, 10, 12 brushes for a couple bucks. I get both natural and synthetic hair brushes, and I use them. Synthetic brushes I try to use for solvent-based stuff, and I kind of stick with the natural brushes for the most part. Let me get that out of my pocket and put them away. For the synthetic for solvent-based stuff, but not always. And then almost exclusively, I'll use the natural hairs for the acrylics. This set I bought probably 15 years ago, again at Michael's or Walmart or something like that. And if I paid $6 for a set of 10, like they had brushes all the way up, this is another brush from that same set. It's a big fan, flat brush, soft brush. I actually use that for dusting. There was probably 10. In fact, there's a couple of them. I dig around in here, my coffee cup of brushes. There's one that I got with the set that I've never even used. Still has the cover on it. So yeah, you can get them there. They're inexpensive. There's another round brush with a nice soft bristle. But even the little white testers brushes, they'll work. I mean, get whatever you get works. Will work. Then there's no. When you get down the road, you can start getting into buying the fancy brushes up in the double aught, triple aught, 4-aught, up to 10-aught brushes. The tiny stuff. But for any general purpose, say it's like a set of. There's another one that's got a little bit bigger. This one has a little bit finer tip on it than this one. And that's what I use is basically the cheap brushes. And if they get tore up or the bristles get too bad, just chuck them out and get another one. They're not real expensive. So I got my silver paint here, the acrylic, and I'm just going to hit some of the stuff that I want to be silver. So I already painted the distributor black. And on this, we're going to have, I'm going to make the cap for the oil breather. I'm going to paint it silver. Since this is a stock one, I'm not going to go back in. I could, if I want to dry brush on the valve cover, say Chevrolet on them. But I'll probably, we'll see. We may go back and dry brush those on just to highlight that, and I can show you how to do a dry brush. It's not a big deal. It's very simple. And I assume with acrylic paints, if you don't like the way it turned out, you just take some soap and water and wipe it right off and do it over again. So we're going to do our bell housing and transmission here with the silver that I've got out. And then we still have to put on the carburetor. We'll have to paint it. The starter still has to be put on. We'll paint it. When before we put it on, and then we'll stick them on with super glue because model glue does not stick to painted or chrome surfaces. You have to bare metal, so you either have to scrape the paint to get a good attachment, or use a CA, a super glue. And depending on the part, I'll go one way or the other. And some of the heavier solvent glues will cut through the paint, but you don't get a good strong bond. It'll stick, but it's not a nice strong bond. Another thing we can do is some black. Once all this is dry, we can take some black paint and thin it down super thin, and turn it into a wash. And you can put that wash over the engine parts, and that'll help bring out the detail. And we will do that once this is dry. A lot of this you won't see once the engine is in the car, so you don't have to be real particular with it. You're going to see more of the bottom than you are of the top, especially in the transmission, because a lot of that is hidden inside the car. Okay, so we've got that done for silver. As long as I've got the silver out, we're going to go over here to the front suspension, and we're going to pick out some of the parts on the front suspension to paint silver, just for bring out the detail. We'll do the bottom of the shocks here, and we'll do a dry brush again. We'll do a dry brush over the whole thing, because the dry brush is a great way to show your detail. Again, this is the bottom of the car, so most of the time you're never going to see this part anyway, so it doesn't matter if you get it. It's not perfect. Okay, so we've got that. Well, we're going to say, we got the silver here. We might as well we'll paint the exhaust pipe. And then I will actually, this black primer I use is actually like a really dark gray. So I'll also go back and paint the frame, the parts of the actual frame here. I'll paint those with some black just so they stand out a little bit. So we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and get the silver, paint the exhaust pipes with the silver, and I'll do that black frame paint, and then we'll come back, let everything dry, then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do the dry brushing. So for you, we'll be right back. And for me, it'll probably be a half hour to an hour or so. So hang on. Okay, so I let the paint dry for a few minutes here. One nice thing about acrylic, it dries fairly quickly. And I'm taking a put a little black here in my what is this? This is the Fritos dip cheese dip cap. Whatever, the salvage, save stuff, recycle. One of these from the cheese sauce dip sauce for Doritos, for your Doritos chips or whatever. It's also being after Super Bowl. I got a whole bunch of them laying around the house. Um, yeah, so you save money anywhere and use those as my paint palette. And when they get really nasty, you just check them away because you always can get more. So I took some black paint and I thinned it way down. I guess you can probably see it's running all over the place on here. And I'm going to take that and over the engine here, we're just going to float some of that in. And if it's like there, looks like it's too dark, get it in there. So we'll just take some water and we'll mix it right on the part. And that'll bring, turn off a little, oh, try not to talk with the paintbrush in my mouth. I'm bad at that. So see all the detail that's now coming out. Again, that's a lot of stuff you're not going to see, but get it in there. And if it's too thick, too dark, you can just add more water, or you can just take a paper towel and or a Q-tip and mat it off and try again. Again, we're not going to see a whole lot of that, so I'm just going to do a quick once over, so you're going to see more of the bottom than you are on the sides or anything else. It's one of those details that it's there, so it's type thing. We do the same thing on our intake manifold. But here it really will show up, so we're going to want to put a lot of water in there. Down the road, as you get built up, the various companies actually make panel washes for doing exactly what we're doing here. But they're a lot more expensive than your acrylic paint with just thinned out with the water. And I'm kind of primarily focusing on spots that we're going to see. Not too worried about getting the sides of the block because you're not going to see those. And again, if looks like it's too much or too dark, you just go in with your paper towel on tight areas like this with your Q-tip. You can kind of bring it back out or blend it in, whatever works best for you. Because we're just adding a little bit of detail. Just by adding a little extra color, we're adding more details. If you don't like it, I'm just taking back up, or I can wait for a minute or two and the paint will start to cure up. And then I can go back and wipe it again with the Q-tip and it'll take some of it off, but not all. So we're just adding definition to it. So now you can, it's just not a piece of silver plastic or a piece of orange plastic. Yeah, so that's what we're do there. Yeah, we'll let that dry. We'll use our craft acrylics to paint the exhaust manifolds on there. I'll use the same silver paint. I don't know or the carburetor on this might be chrome. I don't remember. I have to look at the instructions. But anyway, we'll do the same thing for the rest of the parts of the engine. Speaking of which, we had our fan belt parts over here, and I'm going to take, if I can find it now. And I had my silver paint here in the cup. I could easily have painted the alternator or generator. That's the black one. Gold. Red. Come on now. I know there's a silver one here somewhere. Oh, there's a silver one. That might be the one that's empty. We'll find out. This also works. Silver works great for doing parts that are supposed to be like chromed. So, for example, here I went ahead and used my paint I had on my brush, to paint the fan pulley for the front of the generator. But for the body of the generator, I'm going to just use the Sharpie pen. And we're just going to color it with the Sharpie. May have to go back and do it twice because the ink is kind of thin. I like this ink. This marker is getting kind of old, so it's not putting out as much ink as it normally would. So I'll have to go back a second time, probably. Yeah, for sure we'll have to make sure I get good coverage. But we used our silver Sharpie to do our generator. And that's just that as easy as that. Could have done this. I could have actually done the same thing for my exhaust pipe, but since I already had the silver paint, I just went with that. Back just to be different. Where did we have? I had it just a second ago. Where I put it? I'll use my copper Sharpie, and I'm going to put it right over that silver paint for our muffler. You know, don't forget if you slop it up a little bit because we're going to do a silver dry brush over the whole thing here in a minute. Okay, so I took my copper colored Sharpie and allowed the light to blow and everything out. And we did our muffler with that. We'll let that dry for here just for a second. And I'll grab my rear differential. Actually, we'll grab our fan here first as well. So now I've got another natural hair brush, but it can be a synthetic brush. It's a flat brush, or you can use for the dry brushing. Sometimes the crappier the brush is, or more worn out. Like this one is all chewed up and worn out. The better it will work for doing a dry brushing. But this one's a little past the dry brushing stage. Dry brushing is very simple. I take, it's the last time I have a piece of paper down on my cutting mat, even though it's a complete mess because I've been working on it. Put a little bit of the paint, little paint on the bristles, and here on the paper towel, I'm going to get rid of 90% of it, what we just put on there. Then I'm going to come in and just lightly dust over the part and just let the bristles just kiss the raised areas of the part. So then I know that again, this won't show up very well. I'll get it turned to the light here a little bit maybe. And so just the paint just stuck to just the very tops of the fan details, the bolts for the center and the holes in the tin to keep it stiff, and caught the edges of the crank pulley. That's all it takes. It's just that tiniest little bit, and all of a sudden the part that's just flat black is now got lots of detail. So we're going to do the same thing here with the chassis. We'll start here with I'll try to do this in camera. If the camera will focus. And like I said, I haven't put any more paint on my brush yet. Still the paint we were using on before. And I'm just brushing it across, letting it catch the high edges. That's all we're doing. So it needs a little bit more. Again, I'm going to put some more paint on my brush. Over here, take 90% of it off. And just lightly, that's just what it's called, dry brushing. We'll go in here on our frame. And our body sections, we can get in there. And you just want it to just touch the high parts. It looks like and you can go fast, you can go slow, whatever. It's almost like your hand, like this, you're away, and you just slowly bring it in. Once you've done it a couple of times, you kind of get the distance down. And we're just letting that the paint, the bristles that hardly have any paint on it, they're just catching up. The paint is catching on the highlighted areas. You can see that one time we've done loaded the brush and dried out 90% of it, but I'm still pulling color out of it. And you not wanting it to be pronounced, you just want to put a little sparkle on the highlights. That's basically what we're doing. Okay. See a big difference? Big difference in that. Just that simple little trick. And it's done. We've done that. Started doing it on the rear end differential. Just adds that lightness color. And then I'm going to take, now I got the brush and it's got paint on it. I'm going to load it up a little bit, and I'm going to paint my drive shaft because I want it to be pretty much all silver. But then I'll probably come back with that same copper Sharpie and do it in the copper. I'll turn it over and we'll do the other side. You'll never see that side. But it just brings out the detail, especially on a dark color like this black. It turns it from just a piece of black plastic or painted black to something with dimension and texture. There's that. Okay, so my brush is in the water. Clean up. Which one's the head? So throw all three of them in there. And that takes just a minute with that acrylic. It literally takes about a minute or two to dry because we're putting such a small amount on. And then if I wanted, let's get it done and decide this looks too shiny, which it doesn't really. I could always spray it or put on some matte clear acrylic or gloss. If I wanted to be more glossy, I could put some gloss clear on it. Again, the acrylic stuff easy to get for it. So that's where we're at on the chassis. Got this painted, so we're going to go ahead and put this in, I think. And I test fit it when I put it all together. And now I'm going to painted it, and I'm going to test fit it again to make sure it fits right, which it does. Now I can pull it back out, and I'm going to take, and if I just put glue on it, if I just put glue on that, it's not going to stay. It will stay, but it's not going to stay well. So we can either take, here we can take a little bit of our sandpaper. That's the wrong one. I don't want that one. That one's all worn out. Actually, I'll just use my file just because I have it landed here. It could be sandpaper. It could be your file, whatever. You just want to scrape the paint off of the spots where you're going to glue. You could use your knife, the sandpaper. There's the piece I was looking for right here. My desk is a mess. I would tell you to keep a tidy desk. You'll have a happier life. But every time I clean my desk, it takes me 2 weeks to find everything. So we use that to sand that down to get so that there's no paint on the spots where the glue is going to go. And I'm going to do the same thing with the chassis, but here I'm just going to use the back edge of my knife. Just to give some raw plastic for the glue to bite to. I'm going to glue this on and clamp it on. If you don't have any clamps or clothespins, you could just use tape, some paper masking tape. But paper clips, like these paper, say we showed before, these paper clips. Clothespins work great. Probably somewhere in your house you've got a whole bag of those floating around somewhere in a junk drawer. Or you can go out and spend a couple bucks on these Harbor Freight ones, whatever works. Or actually, you can use tape or rubber bands even. Okay, so we're gonna put just a little dab of dooya on the four corners here where it's gonna touch, and then the two shock towers, which are right there. Be the hardest part to get to go into the holes because they're tented. The instructions I have you put those on after the differential is in, but since I wanted to paint it as one unit, we glued them to the differential but not to the chassis. I said, yeah, I could just easily use the clothespin, or well, these might not be long enough. Yeah, that worked. Well, those aren't quite long enough for that one. I've got bigger ones that would work, but and these, I would say these are cheap too. I got them from like Harbor Freight there's like 6 of them for $5 or something like that. So anyway, we got those just so they match. With my OCD, we'll put that one on there. Okay, so we'll let that dry probably overnight because that's basically all we do on that section of the assembly. That's like one completed assembly with the front suspension and the rear suspension put in. So this is basically done. So it just gets set aside until we get closer to the end of the build. So we'll just set that there. Set on the engine. I need to paint and put on my exhaust manifolds, one for each side, and put the starter on, put the carburetor on. And might as well just for giggles here. See if I can get it. If my paint might be too dry already, we'll try it. Yeah, I think it's too dry. Just for fun. No, it's not gonna. Details are too fine. It's not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. The little Chevrolet script is just too fine. I couldn't get it the paint to stay just on top, so we'll skip that. All right, so by the time when we come back next time, we will have the engine assembled. We'll do the wheels. Those are easy to do. We'll pick it side. I think we're going to use the stock wheels on it. You have 3 options in this kit, but I think we're going to use the stock wheels. I think we're going to make this into a stock 55 build. And then we'll have the engine will be finished. I'll put the other 4 parts on it and get those painted. And we'll do the wheels and we can start on the interior. And when we get the interior kind of put together and pieced together, then we will start painting all the big parts. So till then, if you have any questions on anything we're doing, or any other questions in general, don't be afraid to ask. Just shoot me. You can either shoot me an email, you can leave a question in the comments. Um, my email address is almost always in the description of the video, for the shop card information, or you can just post a comment on the YouTube, and I try to answer every single one of them. So I can answer your question. If I don't know, I will find out for you, or I'll point you to someone who does know. Because this should be fun, and you get to learn, and then it can be a distraction for life sometimes. Sometimes life gets in the way of your living, and this can be just a nice distraction, even if it's just an hour a week or an hour a month or whatever. So with that, I want to say, yeah, we'll see you next time when we start on the interior chassis on our 55 Chevy basic build. You can build it. I know you can. King Bob signing out.